The day after Thanksgiving, a sense of unease gripped Washington, D.C. What should have been a quiet holiday weekend was shattered by the sound of gunfire echoing through the city's streets. In the heart of the nation's capital, violence erupted unexpectedly, sending shockwaves through the community and the country at large. Two West Virginia National Guard reservists, deployed to assist local authorities, were shot while on duty. The attack was sudden and brazen, targeting those who had been called to serve and protect during a period of heightened political tension. These soldiers were in Washington as part of President Trump's controversial executive order, which had sent National Guard units to support local law enforcement. The move had already sparked heated debate, with critics questioning the wisdom and legality of deploying military personnel on American soil for domestic policing. The shooting instantly escalated tensions, transforming a political controversy into a national crisis. News of the attack dominated headlines, and the city braced for further unrest as officials scrambled to respond. Speaking from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, President Trump wasted no time in addressing the nation. He called the attack an act of evil, an act of terror, and framed it as a direct assault on America's security and values. His words were forceful, designed to rally the public and project strength in the face of tragedy. But Trump's tone quickly shifted from mourning to assigning blame. He pointed fingers at the previous administration, arguing that their immigration policies had created vulnerabilities that allowed such violence to occur. The president's rhetoric was sharp, and his accusations reignited old political battles. Trump insisted that lax border controls and expansive refugee programs had opened the door to dangerous individuals, suggesting that the attack was the inevitable result of what he called failed policies. He vowed to take even tougher action to secure the nation's borders and prevent future tragedies. The president's address set the stage for a fierce national debate. Lawmakers, pundits, and citizens across the country weighed in, turning the incident into a flashpoint for America's ongoing struggle over immigration, security, and the role of the military at home. For residents of Washington, D.C. and families of the National Guard, the shooting was a chilling reminder that violence can strike anywhere, even in the shadow of the Capitol. Fear and uncertainty rippled through neighborhoods as loved ones waited anxiously for news and reassurance. Trump's immediate pivot to immigration politics guaranteed that the aftermath would be as divisive as the event itself. Protests erupted, with supporters and opponents of the president's policies clashing in the streets and on social media. The tragedy was no longer just a crime. It had become a battleground for America's most contentious issues, with the nation's unity and values once again put to the test. In his address, President Trump wasted no time blaming the shooting on immigration policies. Standing before the press, he spoke with urgency, insisting that the tragedy was not an isolated incident, but a direct result of what he called dangerously weak border controls. He argued that the nation's safety was being compromised by what he described as reckless decisions made by his political opponents. He declared the previous administration's approach to immigration the single greatest national security threat. Trump painted a picture of a country under siege, warning that without immediate action, more violence would follow. He called for sweeping reforms, including stricter vetting and increased funding for border enforcement, claiming these were the only ways to prevent future tragedies. Trump claimed the suspect was an Afghan national brought to the U.S. after the 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal, blaming Biden's vetting process. He argued that the rushed evacuation had allowed dangerous individuals to slip through the cracks, and that the administration's failure to properly screen refugees had put American lives at risk. This narrative drew a direct line. Biden's policies led to violence on American streets. Trump's words were calculated to stoke fear and anger, suggesting that the government's inability to control who enters the country had deadly consequences for ordinary citizens. Trump's rhetoric turned the tragedy into a referendum on the entire immigration system. He called for a complete overhaul, arguing that only a total reset could restore safety and order. His message resonated with those who already felt anxious about border security, but it also sparked outrage among immigrant communities and advocates. Supporters saw a leader taking decisive action. Critics accused him of exploiting tragedy and scapegoating immigrants. The country quickly split along familiar lines, with cable news and social media amplifying both sides. For some, Trump's tough talk was a sign of strength. For others, it was a dangerous attempt to shift blame and sow division. The debate quickly shifted from the crime itself to the broader question of who belongs in America. Conversations erupted in homes, workplaces, and online forums, as people grappled with what it means to be American and who should have the right to seek a new life here. Trump's message, "Only uncompromising border security can keep Americans safe," became a rallying cry for his base. He doubled down on promises to build more barriers and deploy more agents, insisting that anything less would be a betrayal of the nation's trust. The link between immigration and national security was now front and center. Politicians and pundits debated whether the threat was real or manufactured, but the issue dominated headlines and shaped the national conversation. The country was forced to confront its deepest anxieties about who gets to call America home. For many, the shooting was a wake-up call. For others, it was a painful reminder of how quickly fear can turn into suspicion and division. The shooting became a symbol in a much larger political war, fueling debates that reached far beyond the crime itself and into the heart of America's identity. President Trump's response was not just rhetoric. He promised a sweeping crackdown on immigration. Operation Swamp Sweep, a massive enforcement action, was announced for Louisiana and Mississippi, aiming to arrest thousands. The timing, just days after the shooting, signaled a coordinated show of force. Similar raids had already taken place in North Carolina, creating a climate of fear in immigrant communities. Administrative changes followed, re-interviewing refugees, revoking temporary protected status, and stalling humanitarian programs. The administration cited security concerns, using the shooting as justification for aggressive new policies. Trump's strategy? Reduce both legal and undocumented immigration in the name of national security. The West Virginia reservists were in D.C. as part of Trump's order to bolster local law enforcement. The deployment was controversial. Critics called it federal overreach and a step toward militarization. Supporters argued it was necessary to protect federal property and maintain order amid political unrest. The sight of soldiers on city streets fueled debate over the proper role of the military in domestic affairs. The shooting thrust the mission into the spotlight, highlighting the risks of domestic deployments. The attack became a symbol of the dangers faced by service members at home. The tragedy deepened the debate over the National Guard's presence in the capital. Trump identified the suspect as an Afghan national evacuated after the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. The evacuation brought tens of thousands to the U.S. under a special humanitarian program, with vetting procedures under scrutiny from the start. Critics argued the rushed process allowed security risks to slip through. Trump's narrative, the Biden administration's humanitarian impulse, compromised national security. However, law enforcement has not confirmed all details of the suspect's background. The full story, how the suspect arrived, lived, and what motivated the attack, remains unclear. Trump's account is powerful, but incomplete, fueling political debate before facts are fully known. The suspect's background became a political weapon in a larger immigration battle. Trump's response quickly expanded beyond the D.C. shooting. He attacked Somali immigrants in Minnesota, claiming they were ripping off our country. This leap turned a specific tragedy into a broader condemnation of entire immigrant communities. By invoking Somalis, Trump stoked cultural anxieties and energized his political base. The rhetoric painted immigrants as threats, not just individuals, but entire groups. This approach deepened divisions, conflating isolated acts with the character of whole communities. The president's words became a rallying cry and a source of fear. Despite Trump's confident narrative, many facts remain unconfirmed. The suspect's motive is still unknown. Terrorism, personal dispute, or something else? Law enforcement has not fully detailed the suspect's background or the sequence of events. The public has conclusions, but not the evidence. This information vacuum allows political narratives to dominate. The risk, prejudging a case and a community before the facts are clear. Policy decisions are being made on assumptions, not evidence. The aftermath of the shooting, combined with President Trump's inflammatory rhetoric, sent powerful waves of fear and anxiety through immigrant communities across the country. Suddenly, families who had once felt relatively safe found themselves under a harsh spotlight, their every move scrutinized and their motives questioned. Afghans, Somalis, and many others now face collective suspicion and increased hostility in their daily lives. Even simple activities, shopping for groceries, taking public transportation, or gathering in community spaces, are now fraught with tension and the risk of confrontation. Large-scale enforcement operations and sudden ICE raids force families into the shadows, afraid to go to work, attend school, or even step outside. Neighborhoods that once bustled with life now feel deserted, as fear keeps people behind closed doors. Refugees who once saw America as a sanctuary, a place of hope and new beginnings, now feel betrayed and targeted by the very system they trusted to protect them. The psychological toll is immense. Communities are paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, with parents worrying about their children's safety and children sensing the anxiety of the adults around them. In response, groups like Union Migrante and other grassroots organizations have mobilized, holding Know Your Rights workshops to educate and empower immigrants about how to protect themselves and their families. Hotlines are set up, and legal support is offered to those facing deportation or discrimination, providing a lifeline for many who feel isolated and alone. Instead of focusing on building new lives and contributing to their communities, immigrants must now devote their energy to self-protection, always alert to the next threat. The sense of belonging that once drew them here is replaced by a constant sense of siege and isolation, as trust in neighbors and institutions erodes. The president's words have real, tangible consequences, shaping not just policy, but the daily reality for millions of people who now live in fear of what tomorrow might bring. For many, the American dream feels more distant than ever before, a hope that now seems just out of reach. The shooting and Trump's response have deepened America's divisions over immigration. Supporters see a justified crackdown, critics see dangerous scapegoating. Aggressive enforcement may backfire politically, alienating key communities. Legal immigrants and refugees face growing uncertainty as policies tighten. The path to citizenship is more fraught than ever. The battle over immigration will play out in Congress, courts, and communities. The central question: is America a nation of welcome or a fortress? The answer will shape the country's character for years to come. The fate of millions and the soul of the nation hangs in the balance.